Welcome to the Westminster tradition, where we are unpacking lessons for the public service, starting with the Robo-Debt Royal Commission. My name is Alison Lloyd-Wright. I'm a recovering public servant and a managing director of the Good Trouble Group. Joining me today on Kaurna land are my two favourite fellow recovering public servants, Caroline Crozer-Barlow.
Hello, Alison.
And Danielle Elston of Good Government Advisory.
Hello, Alison.
So in this next instalment of our recruitment series, we're turning the lens around to explore recruitment from a leader's perspective. Last time we talked, or tried to, about the applicant's journey, the pain points, the timelines, and some of the absurdities of public sector job descriptions. And today we're asking, what does recruitment look like from the other side of the table? What challenges do leaders face in navigating public sector recruitment systems and requirements? Where does HR or people and culture fit in at all? And ultimately, is merit about fairness of process or fairness of outcome? And we're also going to touch on the role of external recruiters and what they bring or don't bring to the table. So let's start with the challenges leaders face. Danielle, you've spent a lot of time working with senior public servants. What are some of the most common frustrations they share about recruitment?
Speed. Like, it is their number one complaint. Shout out to all the listener text messages and LinkedIn messages we got. Their biggest thing is that what they are trying to do is stand up a piece of legislation, run a system, deliver something. And if anyone leaves, it's a catastrophic event because it will be months and months and months. They haven't got any redundancy built in. They don't have extra people lying around, and so they have to accept that stuff doesn't get done. So, and they find the labyrinth of approvals, classification reviews, and other internal hurdles take such a long time. And I think what it gets to is what we covered a bit last time and will again this time, which is why they don't then fix the job application, the job spec, or take an interest in it, because every time they share an opinion, it slows down an already catastrophically slow process. So I had one person who is like the equivalent of, say, a DepSec or a deputy CE tell me that they still had to get 3 signatures. So I had to move through a system and get 3 leader signatures to fill the role. This is before they've even started, formed panels. So the biggest frustration is speed.
And I understand, and I guess this will be kind of a theme of the episode, right, is how do you balance those kind of probity requirements against moving quickly and efficiently. I understand why we have multiple people sign off on it, so it means you can't just give your brother or whomever a job. But at the same time, these are executives with whom we trust hundreds of millions of dollars and any number of other responsibilities. Can we not just have them sign off on the frickin' thing?
But it's like an explicit efficiency dividend, right? Like, I have definitely worked in agencies where we, in fact, Dee, we were there together, where we pulled the kind of requirement for someone to sign off on a job being advertised up to the chief executive. And that was a way of ensuring that we met savings. Like, there's a real, it depends where you're at in the cycle of delivery in your agency, but often it is like it. It's super effective. It's really effective.
The other one they do on that one, Caroline, is make them do internal only first. Yeah. So, some jurisdictions are doing that now because they're feeling the pinch, which is they have to have tried to find someone inside, not just to slow it down, but to make sure they're using all their existing talent. You usually have to look at redeployees and other things as well.
So Danielle and I have different views on internal first advertising.
You go first, Alison.
Okay. So I guess I have 2 reasons why I think you should have to do internal first before you go outside. And by internal, I mean internal to the public sector, not necessarily internal
not just
to the department.
Agency. Good to know. Good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know. Yeah.
I think you should have to go internal for 2 reasons. The first is there's actually heaps of good recruitment evidence from the private sector that you get some of your best and highest performing people from within. And if you know you have to recruit from within, people are going to invest more in upskilling and developing those future potential leaders. The second reason is we're not recruiting in a recession, right? We are recruiting in the tightest labour market in decades, and all of the advantages that the public sector had as an employer have eroded, right? With everyone else offering flexible work, some of those things where we couldn't be competitive on salary, but we could offer other things as an enticement to come and work in the public sector, most of them have gone. The idea that you might have first dibs, though, at a job and that will help you advance your career in the public sector is one of those advantages that I don't think we should give away.
Okay, so taking your labour market argument, though, that also means that they will be in the box seat anyway internally, and like it is tough to get external talent and diversity into the public sector at the moment because of all the things you just described, basically.
True.
And so because of that, the reason I think internal candidates will have a leg up anyway, and if you have to run a full process internally first before going externally, all you're doing is taking time, whereas if you just do it all at once, and my other issue with some of it is particularly when it's like when you're under cost savings pressures, the other one is always the see if you can find it inside the department, which just means you are flogging a resource from some other leader who then is going to give you stink eye in the lift for like the next 6 months.
So much so.
Even from other departments that happens, but yeah.
Or counter offer like another work from home day or whatever it is that might be going on. And so it ends up, so I think you can end up just moving the same 7 talented people around and up for like in a kind of circle. And this is like a market where we're struggling to attract people. So I don't think internal only helps that, basically.
I think... No, you go.
I wonder, not to be like the mealy-mouthed person in the middle, but isn't it a little from column A and a little from column B? And that sometimes, like I hear you, Alison, on in particular providing sexy opportunities internally is an attraction. Like, and people, for example, go and work in central agencies because they know they get to work on good stuff, and that is like there's something about providing high prestige opportunities internally as a kind of reward.
And purposeful and meaningful work.
Yeah. So there's something there, but also, Danielle, completely hearing you, it's about where are your pathways in and growing up the next round of people to grow through. So I think, obviously there's like trainees, which we're not going to discuss, and there's grad programs and blah, blah, blah. Like there's a whole thing over there.
About the pipeline.
About how you bring it in. And then there are the parts of the agency where you can never recruit internally, and you can't even, with our current classification system, successfully recruit. Like talk to any IT manager like there are parts of the business where the recruitment challenges are so bespoke and unique. Like this conversation is not really the right place. I guess I just want to put a pin in one thing that I have noticed that is a bit bonkers and is maybe more specific to South Australia than other places, but it's that idea of like people having rights of return to other agencies as they do this kind of internal jump and jump and jump. And I think it does its own really damaging thing. And again, Danielle, actually, I think you helped us unwind this at an agency we worked at where people are on short-term contracts because they're on backfills of other people who've got short-term contracts who are on backfills of other people who've got short-term contracts. And I think it leads to both job precarity, and so you'll end up with really good people who are, acting notionally as a level 6 or whatever it is, but their substantive is a 2. And I think that's really bad for your talent retention as well. So I think there's lots of different ways in which internal recruitment is tricky.
And so can I just pull on a thread from both of those things, which is about like how do you recruit when you have to stay on budget and you can't, spend over, and what causes the precarity is not the short-term contracts, it's leaders who are unwilling to take the risk that they will spend over their salary allocation by giving someone a longer-term contract. And I think that is part of why we end up in such kind of recruitment death spirals is people are unwilling to kind of over-recruit for one of at a team level, right?
Yeah.
To build out that risk of departure and stuff. And so what it means is someone leaves and it's a crisis. it's going to take 8 months to fill that position, at which point you're not spending that salary for 8 months anyway.
Yeah.
In that 8 months, you're pushing additional work onto all the remaining other parts of the team, who then themselves are like, becoming disillusioned, unhappy. And I think a different approach to risk on salary budgets at an executive level would change some of this. Sorry, Treasury.
Well, and I think it's so
you just made yourself deeply unpopular in a few quarters there, mate.
I'm trying to remember what it's called. Like there's a name for that where you kind of allocate your salaries budget to 1.1 or whatever, and you kind of and there are some parts, and I've had this argument with CFOs in different agencies. There are some parts of treasuries who will say, and this gets to the question around probity and the kind of way that these things work, they will say that's actually inconsistent with, the treasurer's directions around having the budget authorization for your expenditure, right? Like if you're staffing to 1.1, then you are at this moment over your budget authorization, even though statistically you have never stayed at 1.1 in your whole life and you always come back down.
And in practice,
you will not overspend, 1.1. Right? And so I think there's a part of this where the rigidity of the rule and how your rules people read it becomes a real part of that problem. And I have worked in agencies which are more flexible in relation to that, and worked in agencies which are incredibly rigid in relation to that, and they all thought they were following the rule, which just says to me maybe the rule has a bit of scope for interpretation.
So let's talk about rules people then. That's a great segue into our next section. HR or people and culture, what role should they be playing in recruitment, and are they getting it right?
Well, can I jump in here before Danielle goes? Because I would say, what role are they playing in recruitment depends on, are they currently getting all of the BAU stuff, like getting people paid right and getting all of the other stuff right first. And I might be stealing your thunder on this, Danielle, but like to me it really depends. Like if they're having trouble getting the payroll out the door, they should play zero role in recruitment because they should be focusing on that.
Yeah, look, what role should they play? What role do they play? The experience of most leaders. And can I just preface that we're doing all these episodes on recruitment, and a bit like episodes we have done on lawyers, we love you, our P&C
We do.
people.
I regret characterising you as rules people because actually every H&R, anyway, you've all been exceptionally helpful to me over the years.
Yeah, so like this is not going to be super pleasant, but just a apology up front. So look, I think what role they're playing often at the moment is to make lots of frameworks, guidelines, talent acquisition capability frameworks. We talked about that with Mike Kaiser, and then create rules to ensure that we're doing our redundant, like checking for people without positions, redeployees, checking diversity, checking misconduct registers. So it's a very process orientated. I think if we ask them, and some of them have reached out, they would say what they'd like to do is find smashing talent for the agency, but they struggle and wrestle with the fact that they are the producer of forms and delegations and rules, and some of those rules are for an aim. So some of those check the First Nations register, that kind of stuff.
And go to things we've talked about in other episodes about the importance of a public sector that looks like the people it serves.
Yeah.
That means you have to have rules in place that force you to look in unusual places or not just take the most efficient and expedient pathway.
Yeah.
I wish there were lots of those rules, though. There's like, you've named the only one. Like sometimes you have to check a register. Like,
yeah. Look, they're seen as gatekeepers. They're not seen as enablers of bringing in great talent is really how it often is working out. I think understanding each other's roles better would be like excellent, and it would be great if we had P&C being partners, crafting like compelling job ads and like ensuring we are bringing in that mix of talent and teaching you how to recruit if it's not something you are naturally good at, picking talent and that kind of thing. I think it's very rare that they get the opportunity to, once all the forms are filled out, to do any of that type of work, and also they are often not well resourced. So I think it ends up being the leader's job to do everything that is not about rules on the base. So we have to get good at talent.
I think it's the leader's job anyway.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And I know this is sort of naturally taking us to the next place we were going to talk about. But I think it is incumbent upon leaders as leaders to play the key role in finding and attracting the best possible talent. Part of that they do by how they lead the people that they already have. And I don't think it's HR's job to try and dig talent out of the woodwork.
I heard a story the other day about a senior executive who did not sit on the panel for a direct report. And I just thought, like, there's empowering and delegating, and then there's you don't understand what your job is. And
Agreed.
like, it's bonkers.
Oh, it's like my beef about leaders who won't chair the meeting.
Oh, yes. Anyway, can we? Yeah, that's
another time.
That's a whole
I don't like writing panel reports and all that stuff.
No one likes them.
I love finding talent, though.
Yeah.
I used to get quite addicted to, like, because I think I'm quite good at it, and I'd be quite addicted to, like, I found another gem. Look at me go, kind of thing. And then I'd grown and go, I can't believe I now have to justify that in this 16-page form, and I need to walk around the building and try and find someone of such and such delegation to sign the bloody thing and all that kind of stuff. But I think P&C or HR, they're the guardians of this merit principle, and it's not their fault that we haven't reconsidered the merit principle, right? Like, that's their job, is to be the guardian of the process.
Yeah.
But also we're really rigid in what merit means, or how, I suppose what I'm saying is we're really rigid in how merit is demonstrated.
Oh my God, the number of interviews I've sat through where a panel, and it may be the P&C person or it might be like one of the other people on the panel, has said, oh, well, you know, this person's really great, but they didn't give an example that spoke to this selection criteria, and so therefore we can't appoint them. And I'm just like, that's insane.
Well,
that
what
is
was that
genuinely
example
insane.
from, we were all listening to an Ezra Klein podcast about recruitment in the US federal public sector.
And they had got rid of subjective, like asking and listening to responses, and they had got it to the point where you just did a self-rating against the thing because they felt that people were so bad at subjectively assessing
merit
what was being said.
That you had to self-assess, which of course meant that unless you self-assessed at 5 out of 5 on every possible thing, you were not even in the mix to be interviewed.
Which skews pretty well for a particular demographic who are good at overstating their capabilities.
But talking about men, Caroline.
No,
not all
I'm
men.
Talking about
Danielle.
cruisers, actually, because we are really good at self-assessing.
So, but the thing about this is you could be the best talent acquisition person in the world, and the public sector is not massive. And if I have run areas that had a bit of a smell about them. They'd been through lots of change, like they were not happy places to be. And I think I turned that around a fair bit, but equally they were known for not being excellent places.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, you can like put any framework, any colour on the ad as you like. No one wanted to apply to work there for 6 months until they got a bit of confidence that some of the silliness had gone and it was a nicer place to work. And so this is where I think this is that bridge between a couple of things. One is we do have all these job specs that are legally binding and all this kind of industrial stuff and the merit principle. And the second one is like people don't want to go and work in certain places and they do want to work in other places, and that actually like P&C almost can do almost nothing about that.
Yeah. And they do and don't want to work for certain people, and they do and don't want to work on certain content. And and
I think content is what people like. We often get asked about career advice, and I like say pick your bosses with as like much thought as you did your life partner, in the sense of their impact on everything that you do is so enormous. And so if they've got the cracking piece of work, but you know that they're a very detailed person and you're not, or you know that they're a micromanager or really chaotic and you don't normally cope with chaos, because we all cope with different types of crazy, right?
Yes.
Don't go and work there just for the good work, because like follow good leadership.
A conversation with a great leader who was being asked to give this advice to graduates. He said, you know, choose the work for your boss. And they're like, in what kind of percentage? And he's like, well, it's not 100%, but it would have to be about 98.
But I think this is where this idea, so yes, there's like putting aside kind of pockets of toxicity, I think the idea of merit as a kind of objective thing really falls down because it misses the fact of teams. Like it misses the fact that teams are not individuals who line up against a particular set of criteria and you stack them up and make the team. Teams are a melange of different strengths and weaknesses, and you're always recruiting to a particular shaped hole in that team. And so I think we need to get better at describing the shape of the whole and more comfortable with that. And I think if we did that, actually what we would also do is get rid of some of the always hiring the same type of people, because I certainly discovered, maybe it was about 5 years ago, I realised that literally 80% of my team were brunette women recently returned from mat leave. And I was like, oh, it's a little bit like when I look in the mirror every day. That's a problem. And sort of the recognition that I had been looking at these objective merit criteria, and of course objectively merit, like, they're all great people, don't get me wrong, freaking awesome team, but we weren't a diverse team and we weren't a team with different strengths and weaknesses. And so I think, consciously thinking, what is the rounded set of stuff we've got going on in this team, and then recruiting for that. And that is something people are really uncomfortable with saying out loud.
Yeah. I also think our rigid adherence to what we think merit, how we think merit has to be demonstrated, means we're not actually using some of the best possible recruitment practices available. So there's a huge amount of evidence about in the private sector, right? In the private sector, about referral-based recruitment. So, hey, you love working here. If you know anyone else in your network that you think would also love working here, tell them to apply. I understand why we can't do that in the public sector, right? I understand that we need to maintain that diversity and not just favour people who already have existing connections in the public sector. But in some ways, the complexity of our recruitment processes already favour people that have existing connections. I'm not sure either Danielle or I would have made it through our graduate processes without other people helping us apply. And I think, it means that you end up with these like bizarre, perverse situations that we've all been in, right? Where there is a candidate acting in the role. But in order for there to be a merit-based recruitment, the job is advertised and that candidate has to apply. And so do any number of other well-meaning people who might genuinely think that they're
about to change their life, get a promotion, get out of their horrible job.
And in some cases that might be right.
Yeah.
But in a vast number of cases, the person who has been acting in the job for a significant amount of time, has demonstrated everything you could possibly want from them.
They've demonstrated merit.
And it's a farce. And it undermines the entire public sector.
And it undermines it in two ways, right? Like, one, because people know this happens. Like the number of people who will call you when a job is advertised and say, is it a real vacancy? Right? So people know that this is a thing that happens. So that's shit in itself, because like people think you're doing this performative advertising, and so people become cynical about the processes. And then also the number of times where it is a genuine vacancy and someone's been acting, but like you are really, really open to whatever the talent comes through the door.
The world has to offer.
And people don't apply. And people don't apply because they're like, oh no, that's being held for so-and-so. And you're like, no, it really, really isn't being held for so-and-so. Like it is, I am genuinely open to this. And so I think it's like there's something broken in that process. So I will say I actually made a pretty deliberate decision in my last kind of roles where I did not make people apply for roles that they were acting in if I was going to appoint them. And I went through the paperwork and I wrote out a thing and I made the CE sign a separate delegation to do a thing. And that was important to me, I think, precisely because of the honesty to the other candidates. And it meant that when I did go out on a couple of them, including where people had been acting in them, People
It
knew.
was genuine. I mean, the difficulty there is certainly in South Australia, your CE has to sign off on that.
Yeah.
And all of them have to face Parliament against a report every year that says how many positions they signed off on without merit, which is such a political easy kick.
Without merit, as per the silly form.
As per
the silly.
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is,
I agree.
We have decided the only way to define merit is to have an open call every time with 77. So it's a process. We've decided merit is a process, and that you call it, and that you have to have gender balance on the panel, and like you have to do this and that and whatever else, and that is merit. That has nothing to do with whether the person. And the other thing that I find really annoying about it is I like to recruit on potential. I've always been someone who's like, you've got the character, you've got the smarts, you've got the thing I need.
Rest we can
Have you done this thing before? I'll show you how to do it. It's fine.
Yeah.
Merit also is this very star,
have to have done it to get
formulaic, have to have done it to get it, have to act in it so that I can say at an interview that I have chaired a meeting or I have done whatever else, which is not merit. Like, to me, merit is more about possibility and potential, but what we actually do is say you need to be able to practice it in an acting role for a minute and then you get to apply for it. So we've actually removed merit in some ways.
So Dee, I would say it is merit. Like merit is proof of, so being able to do a thing. I would say it's not impact. And actually what we should be recruiting for is impact. Like as leaders, fundamentally, what I am trying to do is deliver the thing that I have promised to do the public as well as I can. And that is so deprioritized in this conversation.
Yeah, within the team that I have.
Yes.
Yeah. I guess going to your point, Danielle, because I also really like to recruit for potential, it's really – so again – some interesting evidence from the private sector about referee-first recruitment. So before you interview anyone, you call all the referees of all the people you think are potentials and you have a chat to them.
Don't send them a 4-page form asking them to fill out the selection criteria, FYI.
Like my best recruitments ever have been people where a particular peer said, I've got this person and you should take a look at them. Yep. For that job you've got coming up, because I really trust that opinion. And a job application is a bizarre, like, sales moment that isn't a reflection necessarily of how people actually work. And some of the best, one of the best 2ICs I ever had just did not do a great job interview. That was not a particular skill that they brought to the table.
I've had one too, a 2IC I've had in a couple of places who I've always been like, how can they not crack it? And then I interviewed them for the first time because I had inherited them in other situations and was like, so just because this one task where pepper rando questions at you is something that is not
extrovert-friendly, fast-thinking, verbal task.
Which is exactly what someone... That's right, exactly what people like us are actually actively hiring against, right? Because we are the fast-thinking kind of blah, and we want someone who might be doing a little bit of a slower thing.
And I accept that sometimes, we have to do an interview because they need to be able to be called before the Budget and Finance Committee or something in Parliament, and we need to know that they can hack it. Sure, like I'm going to do that. I don't need this person to do that. I need this person not to perform well at an interview. I need them to perform well in the role.
Yes. And also, isn't that a lot of that thing where we're anticipating so much stuff that cuts people out? It's like one day they might have to go to estimates or whatever, and it's like, sure. And in the event that problem comes up, we might get them extra coaching that we don't normally do, and we might practice more than we would with someone else. We might teach them how to change a tyre. But how about we don't worry about the thing that hasn't happened yet? The tyre hasn't blown. We're not before estimates, and they're going to be really good at this job. So...
So let's then talk a little bit about the role of external recruiters. They're another kind of part of the puzzle.
I'm going to do a big eye roll here that people can't see. So I'm taking an active position against the increasing use of external recruiters.
Why don't you just kick off then, Caroline? Off you go. You go with your position.
Well, not because... Well, so I should say in my current role, I was recruited by an external recruiter, and I've been recruited by external recruiters before, and I've met many excellent ones. I object to external recruiters where people use them as a way of outsourcing the thinking and leadership around the process, which is, of course, the whole bloody thing. So I dislike the ways in which people kind of park their brains in their heads and just like, off you go, come back when you've found me a list of talent. And so it drives me a little bit nuts, in particular because one of the reasons why I've noticed people are using it increasingly is because I think there's a woolliness about the way they do the process that you wouldn't feel comfortable doing directly inside the public service. And so people sort of get that woolly bit done out there and then it comes in for the last bit of a proper process. And I think that that's crap. There you go, my controversial stand.
Neil?
So I think what people think they're good for, different answer, not the same question, is independence, because we do operate in a pretty small world sometimes. And I think that is both true and also a little bit funny, because a CE or a secretary is going to employ whoever they want to employ. And I object to the spending of money for the veil of independence that comes with it. I think it would be good to have people with recruitment. We don't have people in HR with recruitment experience because we've devalued and made it all small. And so therefore, when we want someone to spend actual time spending days on the phone or trying to do something, they don't really have time and capability internally. I don't find external recruiters understand the roles very well. And I think a head of a HR often is sitting around the table and does know that project and does have a bit of a sense of what's going on. And I would like to see us to build that internal capacity a bit more. It's also just really expensive, and I object to that. Sorry, everybody. I think it would be very hard to change. So I'm
going to take the third point of the triangle here and say a bit of both. So I think there is value in using external recruiters, in particular when you are trying to manage an internal candidate pool.
Oh, that's true. That's very true.
And you need some people who aren't their boss.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Or in their chain of command to be able to give them some home truths about either why they might not be as good a fit as they think, or why a reluctant internal candidate should really think about applying.
Yep.
And I think you need to kind of separate that from the day-to-day performance management and employment relationship. I am concerned, though, and so I think this uncovers a deeper belief, which I didn't mention at the top of the episode when you were talking about attracting people from outside the public sector into the public sector. I agree with Danielle. I don't think they understand the roles well. I think partly that's because a lot of the roles they recruit are private sector roles, not public sector roles. And there is something fundamentally different about public sector roles, which is the need to create public value, as well as all the kind of systems that sit and accountabilities that sit around that. And I'm not saying that people can't come from the private sector into the public sector and make a good hash of it, but I am saying it's different. And unless both employer, recruiter and candidate can see and acknowledge that difference, then we end up recruiting, and we do this all the time, people in very senior positions with extensive private sector experience who come in and are shocked and appalled that they can't just do what they want the way they've always done it, and that, in fact, different rules apply to them now.
It's not your money, it's public money.
It's not your money.
And I think that gets to that bit about the role of the leader in, like, the person who is doing the recruitment.
And I agreed with your point on that one.
Yeah. But they could explain that to the recruiter, though, right? Like, and I think that's where the recruiter could have the good talent pool outside. There is something about the breadth of talent pool and the time spent in search, which is really useful, or can be really useful in a recruiter. But if they haven't had that long conversation, and all the best recruiters do this, they sit down with the CE and they really do a kind of like, actually, what is it you're looking for?
Which is the other thing. Like anything else, there are good ones and bad ones, right?
Of course there are.
Yeah.
Some of them are great. Like, I really do just want to say some of them are great. I wish, if I was going to invest effort and money, I would invest effort and money in getting leaders to pay more attention to having self-awareness about what they're actually looking for in roles.
Think about it.
In being leaders? What? All right, any final thoughts on this one?
Oh, look, I was just going to say a shout out to our P&C colleagues, which is CE's secretaries sometimes think that they're going to hire an external recruiter because then it will mean no work for P&C. What P&C has to do is not what an external recruiter has to do. And so to everyone who's like, whether they find the right person or not, I'm still stuck with the police check, the security clearance, the 29 forms to do this, the panel report is 7 notes from the external recruiter. That wouldn't pass muster. Now I'm going to have to go around to the panel and put something together. Like, kudos to you guys for letting someone else take the credit when you have to do all the boring bits and don't have to get to do probably the more fun part of that process.
Do we have time to tell the stories of when, in fact, people assume that the recruiters are doing some of those boring bits, like, for example, checking that people have university degrees that they have claimed for on their CVs, and then it's discovered later on that they haven't. So that's all come back to our internal department P&Cs as well, because it turns out, like, that is so important that some of those basic checking things you can't outsource either because you can't rely on that being fulfilled.
All right. So I reckon that's probably about all we've got time for today. That was a fun dive into what merit means and how it's performed and some of the recruitment challenges from a leader's perspective. We're going to do a few more episodes on recruitment, looking at how we can make the process more human-centric, graduate programs, how we can focus on solution and talent management, retention. So we'd love you to tell us what you think the answer is. You can tell us by finding us on LinkedIn or email us at the westminstertraditionpod@gmail.com. There were no listener stories in this episode, so the winner of our coveted Westminster Tradition mug will go to someone who shares this post, this pod on LinkedIn.
This episode.
Thanks, babe. Till next time.
Just some appropriately bureaucratic disclaimers. While we've tried to be as thorough in our research as busy full-time jobs and lives allow, we definitely don't guarantee that we've got all the details right. Please feel free to email us corrections, episode suggestions or anything else at the westminstertraditionpod@gmail.com. Thanks to Pampot Audio for our intro and outro music. Till next time.